All right. It's about that time. So let's see. My camera fixed up here. There we go. I need my lights on. Where are my lights? There we go. Voila. All right. What's going on? All right, people. Let's see. Where are we at? I used AI for what? Okay. All right. Boo, 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 boo. All right, so let's go. What do we want to talk about? I asked people to have some stuff loaded into chat. I don't see squat. So what do you want to talk about? If you're asking if I used AI on the image for the art, no, I didn't actually use AI on that, but thanks for trying. All right. I got my seltzer going. All right, so then, good. Something good. Okay, so let's talk about that. The question is, what do we have to do to earn a 5 on the enduring issues essay? I'm going to take that a little bit more broadly, and I'm going to say, what do we have to do to score as high as what do we have to do to get to each of sort of the what's the word I would use? Each of the cutoff points on the enduring issues essay. I think that might be a slightly more useful thing to go over. Let me see if I can quickly find. I don't want to suggest it recent. Let's see. Did I have that on my classroom? I'm looking for a particular file. It might be on my classroom. Hang on. Nope. I don't think. Nope. Is this it? Nope. It might be on my stream. Nope. Nope. All right, it's fine. If I don't find it quickly, I'll just go on without it. I was looking for a specific type of rubric I use in my class. But if I don't see it, like I said, if I don't see it swiftly, I'm not going to go too much trying to find it. If it's not available quickly, it's not available quickly. And that's fine. I'll move on. Let me just check one more spot. Because there's a more friendly version of the rubric than what the Regents provides. The Regents provides a very unfriendly version of the rubric. Yeah, it's just not here. All right, that's fine. Give me a second. I'll pull it up. So New York State Social Studies Enduring Issues Essay Rubric. Okay. And this might be the one I'm thinking of anyway. It probably is. All right. Oh, I just shut off the chat. Restore chat. Pop out chat. Okay. This is what I'm thinking of. It kind of does the job. So there are lots of versions of this, but they're all kind of the same thing. So we'll just pick one that looks like it'll be friendly to streaming. Not so much. Yeah, this is fine. Let's see if I can get this open. It may really, it's going to be pretty bad. All right, it's fine. We'll work with it. It'll work. All right, so the actual quality of this is going to be pretty grim, but it is what it is. All right, so I'm going to talk you through it. It's just something in the background to talk about. All right, so the question is, how nuanced or complex does the enduring issues have to be? So let's kind of go from the following. I'm going to assume that my audience tonight is not only AP students. I'm going to assume we have audience from every level of social studies taking this test tomorrow. So, first order of business. The bottom line is a 3 is the absolute minimum acceptable essay score for any student, really. Are there going to be kids who get 2s? Yes. If you get a 2, it's your fault. I'm going to be deadly honest with you, it's your fault. Getting a 2 usually goes like this. You incorporate the necessary number of documents, which is 3. We'll get to that in a minute. Like this thing here, it says 2 documents or whatever. That's not even true. In fact, this thing is annoying me to look at. I don't want to look at it anymore. It's like it's there. I'll just put up the real rubric for now. It's fine. It'll be fine. So the first order of business is, if you're getting a 2, that's your fault. It's your fault because you're putting down an essay. It's basically entirely nothing but documents. If you put down an essay, it's nothing but documents. Even if you have 3 documents, you're not getting anything above a 2. A 2 is a bad grade. A 2 is the kind of grade you get because you don't deserve a better grade. It's really that simple, unfortunately, but it's the truth. So don't get a 2. A 2 is your fault. Now, how do you do better than a 2? So this is the actual grading rubric for the essay. And I'm going to go ahead and pop this up, zoom it in, and talk about it. I'm not going to start at a 5 because the truth of the matter is, as you're going to see as we talk about this, a 5 is kind of subjective, and I'm going to be clear about that. So let's start down to 2 and what makes a 2 and a 3 different. So how do we go from beyond it? So a 0, which is possible, I give only to students that are in like cardiac arrest. Okay, if you're getting a 0, you've either did something very, really crazy, like write something vulgar. Yes, that's happened. Or you decide to make it your opportunity to do a rap battle on paper. I've had that happen. Or I've had people put in their manifesto screed about the teacher they hate the most in the building. I've had that happen. So other than that, you're probably not going to get a 0. Even something really bad almost always gets a 1, like really bad. I've given 1 to a partial paragraph with a mention of a document. I've given that a 1. So 1 is about as bad as it truly gets. Let's talk about 2s and 3s, and then we'll talk about 3s and 4s, and then we'll talk about 4s and 5s, because everything's about what separates the one from the other. That's how teachers think, right? A teacher looks at an essay and reads it, and the first thing you need to know about the Regents essays, they're holistic, meaning they're not graded like the AP essay. For those of you who are AP, let me make a distinction here. AP is not holistic. There's a bullet there's a box for every part of the essay. You either have done it or you have not. And the standard of quality is only, did you meet the minimum? And if you go beyond that minimum, it doesn't really get you anything. That's not how the Regents works. So for those of you who are used to like throwing words at the wall and having your English teacher get fooled by it, this will actually work to your favor in this essay a little bit. And I'll explain what I mean by that. It's not quite the same, but a little bit. So score of 2 is the symptoms of a 2, I'll put it that way, are that the student has really only used documents and is missing parts of the essay. Now, what are the parts of the essay? So we're going to go over that too as well while we're here. So let's just go up. Your essay is always going to have, hold on, let me go find the rubric. I'm hoping the essay thing will be right here. It is not, of course not. All right, I'll open up another one. Yeah, sure, that's what I'm here to do. Help you with your enduring issues essay. All right, so let me open up the actual, let's duplicate this. Let's go back on this. So one thing again to remember is every enduring issue has exactly the same prompt, which is the weakness of the essay. The essay is good in some ways and bad in other ways as an implement of testing your knowledge of history and your ability to utilize documents. So it's bad in a couple of ways and it's good in other ways. So here's your actual essay. Here's the actual stuff you have to be able to do. Ignore the top 2 bullets. They're like a summary of the essay. I don't know why it's structured this way, but it's been structured like this for years. There's like a summary. These are the things you actually need to do if you want to advance your grade. So when I say a 2 leaves out part of the essay, I mean things like it doesn't actually identify an issue. It alludes to an issue. It implies an issue, but it never comes out and says, here's my issue. You want to be very blunt about that. What is the issue you're covering? And be specific. So back to Clara's question. You're not choosing an issue. You're inventing an issue. Now, a lot of students at the regular Regents level would have been given by their teacher a very well-known list of issues. It looks something like this. If I type in enduring issues, global, and I just hit that, this chart right here, no, not quite that. This guy here is a chart pretty much everybody here will have seen. The fact that this person is trying to charge money for access to this chart's an actual crime. It's free and available on the internet. The idea that this person deserves money for that's pretty surprisingly stupid. But here, this one here, okay? All right, I can't be bothered. I'm not really even going to worry about what the actual thing looks like because this is the chart. It's right over here. I'm going to blow it up just to blow it up. But everybody's seen this chart somewhere. If you're in a Regents level class, probably it's been handed out to you. And this is a list of enduring issues. Are these okay? Yeah, they're okay. Have I ever seen anybody get a 5 by talking about conflict? Just conflict. Nope, never seen it. I've seen people get 5s talking about specific elements of conflict or specific styles of conflict. A genocide is not just a conflict. It's more specific. A violation of human rights is more specific. A oppression of people by their government through violence to maintain their own power is a very specific style of conflict. So to Clara's question, how nuanced or how complex does your enduring issue need to be? Human beings in the school building you attend are reading your essay. If you're not my student, I am one of those teachers who could be reading your essay. If you're not my student, the odds are very high I will be reading your essay because I can't read my own students, so I'm only able to work on the other piles. So the odds are very good I would be reading that. Is it possible to get a 5 or a 4 with just writing one of these issues down on this list and just plopping on the page and then using the documents to justify it? It's possible. And is it likely to happen? No, not really, because this is about as simple as the ideas get. So when I say what you really need to do is identify an issue, and you're not choosing, you're creating. I'm talking in AP language. So if you took my AP class or took any AP class, you should understand this idea of creating a topic, creating the argument. In effect, you're deciding what you're going to be covering. Now, there's a catch to that. And this is the part that other kids screw up. Your issue that you create, you choose, you combine, has to be based on an accurate way of interpreting 3 of the documents. Has to be based on that. So if I just scroll down on this particular Regents, it doesn't matter what it is. This is a document that shows it's a chart, it's data, it's a what we call a schedule of data. The demographics of St. Domingo, which is the island of Haiti, 1789 to 1790. You can see obviously the place is mostly slaves. That's clearly what you have here, a huge population of which most is slaves. Fine. So the question then becomes, what argument about anything, what issue does this demonstrate? Is slavery on its own an issue? It absolutely is. So this document, you could say an enduring issue that's related to this document that reflects an accurate reading and understanding of this document is slavery. Okay, but if I now go to document 2, just as an example, document 2 is not about slavery. I'm not going to read document 2, but it's about basically a man who witnessed the Amritsar massacre. That's not slavery. You could not use document 2 in an essay where you're going to talk about slavery, because reading this document, it's not an accurate interpretation of the document to say it's talking about slavery. Now, if you want to say that the situation in British India is similar to the situation in Haiti, is that a minority white population had rule over a majority native population who were coerced to labor, or in other ways oppressed, or in other ways did not have the same rights as the minority white population. You now have developed a more complex and nuanced issue that does work with both documents. So again, you got to be careful. Like, I read an essay in January. Me and Mr. Conroy graded this essay in January, in which this was a student who had, I guess, had either not taken the test last year or maybe had failed it or something. Their entire argument was that white people are evil. That was the entire argument they had. White men, specifically, were evil and are the source of all problems. And the student tried to make a plausible argument out of this with the documents available. And it would have been the January 25 Regents, which I think is this Regents, right? Yeah, it's this Regents. So this was the Regents. And is that a defensible argument? No, not really. You can't just go, white people are evil, and that's a defensible argument. It just isn't. So as a result, that student is effectively, sorry, I'm in the wrong place, is effectively failing to identify an enduring issue. So they just aren't identifying an enduring issue. That's a miss on that particular element of the essay. Like just right there, that's a miss. So don't go and identify an issue that is so broad or so over. Like, could you make an issue or case that says Europeans in a frame of time were more than willing to assert their dominance on a racial and cultural level on peoples around the world? Yes, that's a nuanced argument. You can do that. But you certainly, do I think conflict's going to earn 5 points? I don't. I don't honestly think so. Because I think the person who picks conflict and just writes conflict is an issue. Like we get that all the time. A huge majority of the essays are going to be something like conflict, human rights violations, a huge majority. But it's always better, and I teach this in AP, it's always better to identify the nature of the issue, not just point at an issue. Conflict. Okay, what is the nature of the conflict you're discussing? Two people arguing over the remote control is a conflict. It's not exactly an enduring issue throughout time. On the other hand, two nations warring over a border dispute is an enduring issue that's happened throughout time. So are there documents enough to support it? And by the way, not every document needs to support your issue. You only need 3. And not only do you only need 3, you should only be using 3. There is no virtue to using 4 or 5 documents in your argument. You don't improve your score. By the very nature of the rubric, you're capping your document sort of points at 3. There is no more points for using 4 or 5 documents. You impress nobody, you accomplish nothing. You're wasting your time. And you're weakening your argument. Because the documents are not meant to be universally applicable to any issue you want to come up with. They're not. So do be careful about trying to do something like that. So that's issue number 1 on the essay, right? So right away, identifying the issue. Be very specific about what you mean and what you mean to say. Don't beat around the bush. And most importantly on the issue, this is a very important rule for a lot of kids. Some kids, a lot of kids, and even the ones who are higher level students, think when you write, that is the time to use big fancy words. I feel like somewhere in your life you were traumatized by an English teacher who told you for every syllable you have on your sentences, you're going to get extra points. Or if you use words that have at least 3 syllables, you'll get extra points. I feel like that happened for some of you. That is not an effective way to communicate a persuasive essay. It just is not. Because the truth is, a lot of those higher level, more complex words are by their very definition more complex. And so when you use them in a generic replacement for simpler language, you often don't say the thing you mean to say. So what I tell my students all the time is the way to write is imagine you are explaining this thing to a friendly adult who doesn't know anything about it. That's the language you should use. So you shouldn't use slang. You shouldn't use your text message jargon. But you should speak to the highest level you can without trying to get fancy. The moment in your head you are actively pursuing fancier words than you normally would use in writing, you are making a massive mistake. I'd rather see 5 words that make sense than 2 words that make no sense. Write more words if you need to. You're not going to struggle for time on this test. There's lots of time. It's a 3-hour test. It doesn't take 3 hours to do it. You could spend an overwhelming chunk of it on the essay itself. By the way, feel free to put more stuff in chat you want me to go over. I know those of you are listening. Great. That's awesome. Where are we on attendance right now? Let's see. Oh, yeah. We got 40 people in here. So, put some stuff in chat you want me to go over after I'm done talking about the essay. I do think the essay is probably the most important thing to talk about, so I don't mind doing it. But I'm only going to hang around for about an hour tonight. So, all right. Now, next part. The 3 documents. You need to explain the issue. Look what it says. It's very clear. You must explain the issue. And you do that using evidence from at least 3 documents. So let me pull up a little thing here. I'll show you how I would do that. To be blunt, this is mostly how I do AP. I think this is the same basic structure. This makes a lot of sense to do the same basic structure, okay? So how do we structure an essay or a paragraph? So the first thing I would do is in the intro, let me zoom in a little bit on this. Font size 14, font size 36. Okay. 24. And okay. In the intro, first thing I would do again in the intro is get the enduring issue in there. Now, I'm going to talk about a little bonus that you want to do in the introduction, in my opinion, but I'll come back to that in a second. There is a thing you should do in the introduction that'll help you and score some points too. I'm a big believer on if it's not scoring you points, why are you doing it? Big believer in that. Like, why pay twice for the same real estate? If you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. So always be trying to do that. I'll talk about the CRQs as well, definitely. All right, so the intro. Now the body paragraphs. The body paragraph should be structured like this. You want one paragraph per document. So you're doing 3 documents, so that means you need 3 body paragraphs. Is this a rule? No. But if you if you don't have a intro, body, conclusion clearly broken out, if it's one big, sorry, I just hit my mic, sorry. If it's one big long chunk of text, again, I remind you, you have to have, it's in the rubric. Where'd my rubric go? Come back, rubric. Sorry, I gotta scroll down to it. It's very clear in the rubric that you must have an intro, a body, and a conclusion if you want any score that's not just completely terrible. Even a 3 demands intro, conclusion. All right? A 2 is a sign of no intro, no conclusion. So if you're one of these kids that writes a giant long paragraph and it's my fault that you don't want to follow the rules of basic English grammar, just understand you've created, of one of these bullets, you've created a 2 element in your paper. That's madness. I don't know why you would do that to yourself. So you are writing a conclusion, even if it's something really inane where you basically just restate what you've already said. Fine. Get a conclusion in there, no matter how simple it might be. Anyway, back to the notepad thing. So, 3 body paragraphs. The way I always structure my paragraphs, and I think this remains true. Number 1, very important, you want a topic sentence. Now, a topic sentence in this case should be something along the lines of, all right? This is like an example. One example of how European imperialism negatively affected native peoples is seen in doc whatever number it is. Okay. Now this here would be my enduring issue. Oh, that hasn't happened for all of history. No one said an enduring issue has to happen for all of history. If it's happening for a chunk of time that is, a clearly established period where this matters. I mean, the Cold War was only about 50 years, gang. And we would still consider that the issues that came from the Cold War enduring. So it doesn't have to be a millennial-long, age-long thing. It doesn't have to be that. Now, I picked this particular issue because if I looked at this document, this is an example of European imperialism negatively affecting natives. This one on the Amritsar massacre is European imperialism negatively affecting natives. If I go to this one, 3, it was about the Khmer Rouge. No, Raven, I'll get to that in a second. So over here, this one, this is about European descendants, little more nuanced, but European descended peoples harming the black natives of South Africa. The whites were natives in this case too. Tiananmen Square wouldn't help us. Couldn't use that one. But I've got an issue where I can get 3 things to work. I can get number 4 to work with this. I can get number 2 to work with this. I get number 1 to work with this. There's my 3. I'm good to go. Sorry, we don't need this at all anymore. So that would be what I would consider to be a very reasonable. Most of you can come up with something like that. Now, is that conflict? Yeah, it's conflict. All right. So what? Like, that's not enough. Give me a more deep. What is the nature of the conflict? The nature of the conflict is European imperialism negatively affected native peoples. That's the nature of the conflict that 3 of the documents demonstrate. So I'd start with a topic sentence looks like this. The next sentence, right after that, the next sentence would be something like, in document, again, X, I'll use 1, whatever, 2, it doesn't matter. In document X, whatever number it is. And then this is the part where you Murray, that's a dangerous game. Should we pre-fire? I assume that means, should we just assume we can get away with talking about human rights violations? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe not. Can you make 3 documents fall along the lines of 3 human rights violations? I mean, maybe. I don't know. I wouldn't make that claim. There was one on there about technology in the 20th century a couple of years ago. You would have had nowhere to go on that. Okay. Hold on 1 second. This person is now gone. Goodbye. You wasted my time. All right. So next. Back to the essay. Oh, I keep clicking on the wrong thing. Sorry, I'm spazzing out. I'm clicking on my OBS window instead of the actual window. All right, so in document X. So now, at this point is the part where you describe the document. Describing the document. Don't quote the document if you want a good score. Quoting documents is not a way to get a good score. Describing is the art of paraphrase, where you summarize. The word I use in AP is aggregate. You summarize with intent, meaning you summarize the elements of the essay to help to link up with your enduring issue / your argument. Okay, that's what you do here. That's the right way to approach such an essay. This is the correct way to handle business, all right? You summarize. The reason quoting is bad is because although quoting by definition does in fact score you the idea of using the documents, let me show you the rubric again. So if I go to a 2, includes few relevant facts, examples, and details from the documents, or consists primarily of relevant information copied from the documents. So if your essay is primarily, and primarily just means what? I don't know. Primarily means it's 50% majority. So it's not even that much, really. If you have a majority of the actual evidence that you put into the essay is nothing more than you copying lines from the essay or copying quotes from the essay or whatever, from the documents, or whatever it might be, that's a 2. That's a 2 thing. All right. All right, gang. So the people who are here causing a problem, I'm going to give you one chance to go away before I have to shut the chat down for everybody else. All right. I don't really want to do that. Because if I shut the chat down, then I'm talking to people who are unable to respond back. They're unable to tell me what they need. You're getting in the way of people who might need this help. Maybe you don't need this help. That's fine. Go get a girlfriend. Go get a boyfriend. Go find a life. For everybody else, they might want to get this test done tomorrow because half of them never want to look at global history again. So do them a favor and leave them alone and let them do this. Thank you. So, if you're having an essay that consists primarily of nothing more than information you copy out of the documents, that's like a 2. That really harms your essay. There is nothing where quoting helps you. It never helps to quote. I know you can copy words from if I put ancient Aramaic up there and you copy it, that doesn't mean you know how to speak ancient Aramaic. It just means you can copy. So don't copy. Aggregate, summarize. That's what you do. And if you do that, and if you do it well, you can get a high score. So this is the moment of the essay where you're going to do that. You're going to incorporate the document in this part. And that will be, again, depends on the document. You write in some evidence about it. How much? How much I need to put? I don't know. 1 line, 2 lines about what the document is and a main idea kind of thing would be fine. The rule of thumb I always give people, if you want to get a higher score, a 4 or 5, even a 3, you're supposed to have outside information even for a 3. For a 4 or 5, you want to have like 2 to 1 outside information. So now's your moment for that. Now's the moment here. This next part, the third sentence here, I'll do it like this. Let me break it up so it's a little more organized. All right, these are different sentences, okay, in the same paragraph. So, something like, so let's pretend this was about document 2. Just to go ahead and give an example. In document 2, we have the Amritsar massacre in India. Hopefully everybody knows what that is, but long story short, the British government under the British Raj, late in its rule of India, engaged in a thing called the Amritsar massacre, where World War I style military equipment, wielded mostly by sepoy soldiers, fired upon a crowd in Amritsar, the city, in what was effectively like a public square. An unarmed crowd of people were shot down and murdered in cold blood by the orders of this British commander. Okay, that's what it was. Now, outside evidence beyond the document. Here's the kind of stuff you can do, right? So you can say something like this. The Amritsar massacre was a long-term result of the arrival of the British in India. This began with the arrival of the British East India Company, who quickly used their trade arrangements to take control of local Indian politics. Eventually, this company, if I want to get really fancy, I'll throw in a vocabulary term, this joint stock company. Now, do I know what a joint stock company is? Absolutely. Should you define it? Absolutely. The goal is not to tell the reader what the reader knows. The goal is to demonstrate you know what you're saying. So if I was a student, I would say something like, this joint stock company, comma, a company owned by many different investors, comma, was able to control the entire country of India. That's a good amount of outside information there. That's not minimal. If you put a similar amount of outside information to every one of your body paragraphs, I would expect a 4 as a score that you could expect to get. If you do it very, very well, we'll talk about what you need for a 5 in a second. You could also do that. Okay. Now, this goes back to the intro for a second, because if you really read what I wrote, I'm not giving any outside information really about the Amritsar massacre. If you're paying attention, I gave the background to it, which we call in history context. I'll go back to my intro. One of the things I said you can do as a bonus in the intro to help you start scoring points right away is to do context. Now, this is a bit of a problem for some students. I'm going to explain why. If you're an AP student, you have a massive advantage here. We do context in the intro all year long in every style of essay we write. If you're a regular ed student in a Regents level class, I have to be blunt, I don't know what kind of writing you did in class this year. And I certainly don't know if you were taught how to write about context. It would be lovely if you were. It is the most important skill in all of history, but hey, we are where we are. So let's go for a second and assume that nobody has been taught to write context. What is context? Context is the immediate background behind the situation that got us there. I'll give you for example. Why the hell do I have 61 people tuned in to my 129 subscriber YouTube channel at 9:18 at night on June 16th, 2026? And the answer is the context. The context of this whole of business that we are dealing with right now. Sorry, let me shut off my Discord here. It's bleeping away. The context of this whole business here is that we have a Regents exam tomorrow. Why am I doing another stream at 9 a.m. tomorrow from the high school? Because we have a Regents exam tomorrow afternoon. Why would it be pointless to do this stream tomorrow night? Because the Regents exam will be done. So in other words, the context, the frame around the picture is that we have this Regents exam. It is at a certain place and at a certain time and covers certain things. And that is informing everything we are doing. That is how history works. It works on context. So if you have an enduring issue, I'm going to go back to what we made up before, where I said European imperialism negatively affected. You should not use all capitals. I'm doing this for the sake of making it clear here. Native peoples. My big head's in the way. Hang on. There. Okay. So, European imperialism negatively affected Native peoples. And that is going to be my my enduring issue. What is the context for that? Well, the context for that would be something like this. During the age of imperialism, European nations rose to global power. All right, I'll write it in a way you might write it. You probably wouldn't write rose to global power. You might write something like got or grew very powerful by using their navies and sailing ships to travel around the world and conquer other areas of the globe. That's context. Now, you could write more. You could write more. This, by the way, why do you want to do this? What does this do? It does two things, and I'll explain why in a minute, because I'll tell you, I sit in those grading rooms. I know the conversations that happen. This helps in two ways. Just hang tight. The English were particularly effective at this and were able to conquer huge territories with large populations, such as India. And I would fix my crap spelling. Is there points up for spelling? No, not unless you spell something so bad we don't know what it is. All right. I once had a kid spell agriculture as architecture. Like the kid wrote architecture, but they definitely meant agriculture. That was interesting. So don't do stuff like that. But minor spelling mistakes, no big deal. So that would be an example of like a context you could put in there. All right. Now, I'd have to make a sentence that says European imperialism negatively affected native peoples, and it might be something like an enduring issue. So many of you are going to write throughout history. Don't write that. Never write those two words. They don't help you. Whatever you're going to write after that will still be fine. Don't write throughout history. So you might say, an issue that has affected a large amount of the global population is the way European imperialism negatively affected native peoples. Period. Done. There's your enduring issue. You clearly stated it. You're good. Then I write some context. Why is context helpful? And why am I using context down here, or a contextualized piece of evidence, as outside information? Here's why it helps you. Outside information is not really well defined. If you look at the rubric, unlike the AP exam where it is well defined, it's not well defined here. A 3 includes limited relevant outside information. 4 is supports the task by incorporating relevant outside information. 5 is richly supports the task by incorporating substantial relative outside information. So aside from amounts, right, because this is relevant and this is substantial relevant, don't worry about amount for now. We'll talk about that in a minute. There really isn't a lot of definition as to what outside information even is, right? So, I'm looking to see if they give any framework about that, but they don't even do that here. So, context is obviously evidence not in the documents because it's by definition in the background. So it's not in the documents. So that automatically makes it outside information. In addition, this is the critical piece. Outside information that is contextual is effectively automatically analysis. If you're saying this led to that, because that's what context is. Context is the frame that got us where we are, the situation that put us where we are, the thing that's causing us to act as we're acting. If you do that, that is automatically analysis. Analysis is necessary for a 4 and a 5, and you must have more analysis than description if you want a 5. And that is a standard we hold to. So when I read your paper, and you've got, sorry, I hit my microphone again. You got a laundry list of facts, and none of them really are analytical. They're just detail, like a bullet list from a note sheet. You're not getting above the 4. You need, in fact, the more of that you write, the further you get from a 5. Because to get a 5, you need more more analysis than description. So if you're filling it up, now what is description? Description is description of factualized evidence, right? So here's an example I use in my classes. Difference between analysis and description. If I ask you, describe the room that you're in, and we'll use me right here, right? So do I have a selfie camera on this? I don't have a selfie camera. All right, hold on. God, I'm ugly. All right, and I'm out of focus. Jesus, God, I'm giving myself a headache. Hang on, let me focus my camera. Oof, I didn't realize I was so out of focus. It's because I have autofocus on. Autofocus is the devil. All right, sometimes you're just ugly and ain't going to get any better. There's me. All right, describe the room of it. There isn't a lot to see, obviously. There's a fan behind me, chair, microphone, whatever, right? You got this shelf over here. And with the lighting the way it is, I don't know how much you can really see on that shelf. Let me see it, because the way it's coming across on the camera. Hang on. Let me see if I can. I can. So if I were to... Oh, that's as dim as the light gets. Okay. You could all see... Do I have a pointy stick? You could all see I got this Chinese fellow right there. All right? If you say there's a statue of a Chinese warrior on that shelf. If you say there's a little model of a ship over here, a sailing ship over there. If you can't see down here, but trust me, there's a statue of a Chinese plate and a jade elephant. This is real jade elephant, okay? That's description. There's a jade elephant, Chinese god statue, whatever, boat, etc. Analysis is why is there a jade elephant? Why is there a Chinese god statue? Why is there a sailing ship? Why are there a collection of Norse god statues right here? There are, trust me, okay? Why? Why this elephant, right? Why did I put it there? Now, the answer would require substantial knowledge of me and my life, which you don't have, but, whatever. My point is, you guys don't know the why, but in history, you need to tell me the why. Why were the British why did the British go to India? Why did the British East India Company get to do this and not the British government itself? Why the jade elephant? My uncle got this for me from Nepal. He went to Nepal and he got me this elephant. I asked him, bring me back something made of real jade. I want real jade that came out of the Himalayas. He got me a set of elephants. Now, why elephants? Well, that speaks a little bit to whether or not Nepal is more of an Indian place or a Chinese place in terms of its influences, right? Why do I have a Chinese general statue? Well, that's a bit complicated because if you know me, you know that I'm very fond of Chinese history. It's my favorite thing. But why do I have it? I have it because a student gave it to me as a gift. Why did he give me this statue as a gift? Because this statue is Guan Yu, the Chinese god of war. And I discussed that guy in class once, and he looked them up and found this statue available. I don't know what he paid for it. It's made of some sort of metal. It's pretty heavy. And I was very touched by the gift. So it went on my shelf with, in my office here. So that's a story behind it, right? Those are the whys. Why is, if you look around your room where you are now, why is your room the way it is? Why? Why are you wearing what you're wearing? Why is your walls the color they are? That's why. Now, why is analysis, and you do analysis by either doing the background or something, or if you want the shortcut, there is a shortcut way of doing this. Let me get my head back to a reasonable size. It's making me scary. If you want to have a shortcut to analysis, use the word because. I'm going to put my elephant back. Use the word because. Because every time you use the word because, whatever words follow it have to be analytical. You have to be telling me the why or the how of something. All right. Why is this water fizzing? Because it's seltzer water that's been injected with carbon, right? Why are there 65 people watching me tonight? Because we have a Regents exam in about 15 hours. Because. The more you write the word because, the more you are analyzing. Now, because is the simplest version of that. There are other versions of words that could just as easily take the place of the word because. I'll give you some examples of this. Therefore, as a result, due to this led to, an effect of that was, this was caused by. All that kind of language is certainly more complicated than simply saying because. But so help me God, if nothing else, use the word because. To get a 5 is going to be very difficult. Very difficult. You got to convince 2 adults that what you wrote is out of the park amazing. We don't give away a lot of 5s. Frankly, it's very subjective. I'd say we have a decent number of 4.5s, which means 1 grader. I'm talking like everybody knows. Not everybody here may know how this test is graded. We do not grade your multiple choice in any way, shape, or form. We do grade the CRQs. I haven't forgotten Mo. We'll get to that in a second. And we do grade the essays. The CRQs are graded by 1 grader. They do it. It's done. There's no second thoughts. There's no second guesses. It is what it is. So don't mess those up. The Enduring Issues essay, each essay, your essay, you as a student, will be read twice. once by one adult, once by another adult. It has to be a member of our department, someone who's specialized or certified for social studies, okay? It's a very small group of us, 8 or so of us in the building that can do it. Now, I read it, and I decide what grade it gets based on this rubric. And what I'm looking for are two things. Number one, did you do the job? The job being, where'd it go? Did you do all the parts? And we'll get to the rest of them in a second. Job two is to what quality are they done? So I kind of look at it in my head like, for each of these elements, each of these 4 bullets, is there a check? And if there is a check, is it a check minus, a check, or a check plus? A check minus to me is it's there, but it's at a minimum possible standard. That's not good. That's like a 2 or a 3. A check is like it's there and it's adequate. That's like a 3 or a 2. If you want to get into the 4 and 5 territory, we need check pluses. And not everything is going to be able to do the job. 5s occur because your analysis and your facts are there in bulk. You need to have something like 2-to-1 ratio, where for every 1 word of document information you incorporate, you need to have like 2 to 3 words of outside information you incorporate. It needs to be overwhelmingly in that direction. And you need to be coming back to because as much as you can about your argument. How is this demonstrating your enduring issue? Why is this an enduring issue? How has the issue endured? And we're going to get to those elements in a minute. Now, you'll see the word argue here. In these paragraphs, you're going to have to put in an argument. The place to put in an argument is going to be somewhere in the body paragraph. That for each document, each body paragraph will have something like, you put your outside information there, and you could put your argument either way. You could put it before your outside information, or you could put it after. You could put it before the outside information or after. It doesn't really matter. I'll put it before for a second. So I described document 2. It's about the Amritsar massacre. Everybody got shot. So sad, so bad, no good, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now, how do you argue? The argument piece has 2 elements you must do. All right, so sorry, wrong thing. I'm clicking the wrong thing. Here they are. Argue that this is a significant issue. Okay, that should be obvious. That has endured by doing the following. Showing how the issue has affected people or has been affected by people. I'm going to tell you right now, you'd be very silly to do this generally. Like, how has genocide been affected by people? I don't know. How do you say that? How has genocide affected people? That's much easier, okay? So I would actually stick to this half of the statement and go and prove that one. How has the issue affected humans? There will be obvious ways this has happened. Shooting people with guns while they're protesting in Amritsar is a pretty damn obvious way in which British or European imperialism has negatively affected people. They got shot. Pretty obvious. And then you have to also do one of the elements from the second dash. So it's not just one of these dashes, it's both. And again, this is how has the issue continued to be an issue, or how has it changed over time? Now, this could go either way. I'll be honest, it's usually easier to talk about how an issue has evolved rather than just try to say how it's continued to be an issue. Because whenever you do something being similarity or staying the same over time, it's very difficult to make that sound more than a very very basic level statement. Usually you're better off talking about how it changed over time, because it's just easier to talk about that. Like, European imperialism changed over time in the case of Britain, for example, because the East India Company lost power after the Sepoy Rebellion. That's not in the documents, more outside information, which led to the British Raj, the British taking over India formally as the British government took it over, and that would eventually lead to the kind of military interventions that brought us the Amritsar massacre. So then you have a chain of events all the way through, and you show how the issue has actually changed a bit, because what was once a project by a European company became a state run by the European government that used to own or used to control that company. It's a very different set of circumstances. That's an evolution over time. Usually easier to discuss that. And the place to do that would be, again, formatting wise, in the body paragraph, kind of like right after the document. You can say, this demonstrates, feel free to use the word demonstrates a lot if you want, that the issue has affected people since the protesters in India were shot and killed in the massacre. Clearly an example, right? And then you can say something like, the Amritsar massacre was a long-term result of the arrival of British in India, and this is the change over time. How has the issue evolved over time is right here. This is the timeline. Again, context does it for you. It's automatic. I don't have to even think about it. By writing some context, my outside evidence now shows how the issue has evolved over time. That's what context is going to do. It tells you the backdrop. It tells you the background. It tells you how we got here. So stick to context. Use it as much as you can. Again, AP students see this all the time. The rest of the kids, I don't know. But you want to talk about that background, that backdrop as much as you can. Context, context, context is everything. All right, now, last bit. Last bit on the rubric. The outside information we already talked about. So the only thing left is that intro body conclusion. So what you want to do, what I have here, I'm going to separate it out a little bit to make it a little bit more workable. So this is one body paragraph. Topic sentence, followed by document evidence. Again, one document being talked about here. Paraphrase. Aggregate. Do not copy. Okay? Then, next piece. How does this document show your issue? Just say it. Say how it does it. State the obvious. If you want to go more in depth, great. But I'm trying to make sure everybody here has a minimum 3 with a chance at a 4. And you'd be surprised. It can be pretty easy to get a 4 if you do the right things here. You just got to do them all. If you do all the items, it's hard. You could probably get a 3. I mean, I'd probably get a 4. So that's the next bit there. Sorry. Let's separate this out. And then lastly, outside evidence that demonstrates how this changed or evolved. Evolved could mean like slight changes, small changes or changes over time. So that's this. So in other words, what I have on the screen here right now, and I'm going to move this just right there. Yep. That's everything that goes in a body paragraph. All these elements. Topic sentence, document evidence. How does the document show your issue is a valid issue? And then give me some outside evidence that demonstrates how this changed or evolved over time. If you do that, that's a 4 minimum paragraph. If you do it very well, it's a 5. This is where the money sort of, it's put up or shut up. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where you're going to either get the 4, get the 3, or get the 5 in the quality of the essay you do here. If you eliminate these things, if you don't do some elements, if you never actually do something like this, your score goes down immediately. Leaving out chunks of the essay is the surest way to screw your score up. Now, this is only one body paragraph. You need to do everything on the screen 3 times, once for each document. Everyone here can do that. Everyone here can do that. So the fact that you can pick 3 documents, and all right, what if I don't have outside information about one of the documents I picked? That's okay. You don't need to have outside information about every document you picked, but you should be able to speak intelligently about the circumstances around these documents. That's why context really matters. See, you might look at a document. I'll give you an example of what I mean. You might look at a document like this document 1 and go like, geez, man, that sucks. It's just a chart. Man, you're crazy. That is a document that is begging for you to throw outside information out of it. Like Toussaint Louverture, Haitian Revolution, Enlightenment thinkers, Napoleon's conquest in Europe, the Louisiana Purchase, if you know your U.S. history, is all related to the events that are about to happen as a result of these demographics. Like, there's so much you could talk about here. The outside evidence is amazing. Whereas something like the Amritsar Massacre, well, this is also pretty helpful because there's a lot of Indian history around this time they're not talking about. You could talk about again, I don't know what every class did, but if your class happened to have done the Amritsar Massacre in sufficient detail and you read the actual transcript from the trial of the, not even really a trial, of the questioning of the army officer who ordered the massacre, it's pretty damn clear what he was trying to do, and that was shoot all the people he could there, and he would have run them over with the tank if he could get it into the square. He says that point blank. It doesn't talk about things like, well, why was this tension even going on? You don't get Sepoy Rebellion. You don't get British prohibitions on native practices like sati, the burning of widows. You don't get the cartridges of the pig fat and the beef fat and how that offended various religions. You don't get any of that here. You don't. But you certainly could bring that in. So there's a lot of outside information that is available there. Gandhi, all that stuff as a later issue. Context could be after. You could talk about where this leads. This leads to a figure like Gandhi. Go for it. Absolutely go for it. I'm not going to get into the other documents I'm choosing not to use for this because I don't want to complicate the issue. My point is, you'd be surprised how much outside information there actually is available if you stop and are willing to think. Willing to think is, of course, the issue. So again, this situation here, ideally, is repeated for each of the documents. You get 3 body paragraphs built roughly like this. Enter a conclusion. Your essay is over. That's the way you do the whole essay. Mo is asking about the CRQs. And his question was, I'm going to go up and find out. Mo. Do we have to go as in-depth on the CRQs as we do SAQs? Mo, I'm going to restructure that question because you're not, I don't have 86 students in AP. And there are not 86 students in AP. So a lot of the kids who are watching this have no idea what an SAQ is. So I'm going to restructure the question for those purposes. What Mo is asking is, on the AP exam for World, there is a similar style of question to the CRQs on Global, and do you need to go in as much detail to get those right? So as I've explained to my AP students, you can look at the regions for global history as like the wish.com version of the AP exam. That's not really an insult, by the way. It means they really did try to copy the bones and model this exam after what the AP exam in world history tries to do, but it does it pretty imperfectly. And one of those imperfect areas is indeed the CRQ section. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Your CRQ section is going to be 2 sets of questions, each with two sets of documents. How do I want to phrase this? 2 sets of questions, each of which having 3 questions within the set. So there's 3 questions per set. And then of those 3 questions, one of them will have no documents, will require you to make some comparison to the other 2 documents in there. So question 1 will have a document, maybe 2. Question 2 will have a document. And then question 3 in the set will require you to compare both of those things. In my experience, with very little help, the overwhelming majority of students can get the first question of the set and the second question of the set correct universally. I would say the percentage of students who get the first 2 questions of each set correct in the school is probably north of 95%. It's a very high percentage of students get the first 2 questions in each set correct. Not really an issue. Where it goes a little bad is the third question. And we're going to end tonight on this note because I'm almost at that hour here. The third question each set requires, and this is a problem, requires evidence from both of the documents. If you don't reference the documents, document 1, document 2, in this answer, you will get no points. Let me be clear. Do I think the questions for the CRQ sets for the first document, the second document, this one here, do I feel like these lines are sufficient space to answer these questions? I do. When you get to the third question, do I feel like these lines are sufficient space to answer these questions? I do not. I think you need to write into the blank space below. You can, there's no penalty for that. You need to write more than this because I have to identify. That's a sentence. I have to explain. We talked about the word explain requires because. So now you have to do that. But not just identify and explain anything I want. I have to identify and explain what they want me to do. In this case, it's cause and effect relationship. How do you do cause and effect if you don't tell me the cause and then tell me the effect? So you have to identify the cause, identify the effect, explain why the cause led to the effect, and then you have to have information that comes from document 1 and document 2 to back that up. I don't think, seriously, I do not think pen in hand I could get that done in the space provided here. I do not think so. I think it's insufficient space. And I think it leads kids to not write as much as they need to. So go beyond this area and write down into the blank space until you feel like your answer is complete. It is worth the time. This question is worth as much as the multiple choice question. If you've never looked at the magic chart, I'm not going to do that today, but maybe I'll do it tomorrow morning for the stream then. The magic chart is going to heavily favor the multiple choice section and the CRQ section for your grades. It's the way you build your grade fastest is to get those things right. The essay is a more complicated part of the grading. It's its own separate element. These things are all tied together. Do not neglect these questions. They're easy enough. You shouldn't be getting them wrong. And getting them wrong because you were lazy, didn't write more than the lines allow you to, and didn't reference both documents is going to be a real tragedy. And it's going to cost you points. And you don't want to get costed points on this. Remember, this exam, for everybody listening, counts 12% for your yearly grade. You don't want to mess this up. It's not worth it. Go in there and do your best you possibly can on it. Now, the other CRQ set will end with another comparative question. This one happens to be turning point. This is difficult. You have to create a turning point. It's not in the documents, but it has to be related to both documents. So you have to look at document 1, look at document 2, it goes, what is a turning point that relates to these documents? And there are many possible answers, but you have to invent it. I think that's pretty tough. Now, how detailed do you need to be? Same as I said before. Do I think that this set of space is enough to do both of these things well? I do not think it is. Right beyond that. Okay? All right. We did 89 people. It was at our peak. Let's check out our peak. 89 total views. Yeah, we peaked out. Our highest concurrence were 29. Look at me. I'm Mr. Bust. All right. So we're going to stop there. We'll do this again tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I'll be broadcasting from the high school. It'll be 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. The test is at 12. We start sharp at 12. At 12. So you need to be here on time. Do not complicate this process. Seriously. Don't put your cell phone in your pocket and check it at the front desk. Leave your cell phone in your bag. Put it in a locker if you still have access to the locker. I guess you maybe don't have access to a locker anymore. Leave it in your bag. Leave it. Don't get involved in having to check cell phones. It slows everything down. It makes it harder to get right in the gym. We're going to start immediately. Assuming I'm in control tomorrow, and I think I will be. You're going to go in. You're going to look for your teacher and their section you're in. It's going to be labeled at the front of the row. And you're going to have your scan sheet, your essay, your Regent scan sheet, your bubble sheet, pre-printed with your name on it, sitting on a desk. Find it. There should be an alphabetical order and sit at your name. Easy. If you're a special ed student with a 504 IEP, you're testing another location. I don't know where that'll be at this point. I don't know. I know what rooms are available. I don't know who's in which one. If you're not sure, get in a little early. Go to A-Wing and ask there. A-Wing is running that part of the show. They will tell you. There may be something like a schedule or a list in the front of the building on a window or something that says, hey, Bobby Bits, you go to the testing room. Hey, Timmy Tuff, you go to the library reading room. You go to the ASC. It might just tell you that. I really don't. It's not my monkeys, not my circus. I don't do that part, okay? That's an A-Wing thing. Mr. Ackerman runs that. I imagine it'll be pretty obvious and self-explanatory when you get there tomorrow, but if it's not, go to the gym. Worst case scenario, seek out your teacher, and your teacher will help you get settled up. All right, we're not going to leave anybody out to dry. I'm very fortunate to report if you are in those rooms, you have very good proctors. I saw the proctor list for those rooms, and most of them are filled with people who are going to be grading this Regents. Very capable, very good social studies teachers and social studies special ed teachers who, if you don't know them, that's fine. They do nothing but social studies special ed. Now, it's not every room, but it's most of the rooms. And the rooms where not everybody is a social studies teacher, it's some of the people in special ed who I most respect. So we're in very good shape. I was wondering, do I need to have some sort of a proctor meeting tomorrow? I do not think so. I don't think you're going to have any issue with whispering or anything like that. I don't think any distractions will exist. I think you're going to be just fine. All right. So we're going to call it there. And we will chat again tomorrow, 9 a.m. If you want to join, join. If you don't. No harm, no foul. I won't get offended. If I'm talking only to myself, that's okay. I do that most of the day anyway. And I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Later.